Well, I guess so.
And do you want me to, so if I'm starting now, do you want me to, I'll talk until about 12:30?
Well, yeah, sure. And,
Take questions?
yes, sure.
Okay.
So no problem. It's as usual.
I'm trying to block. I can use my, there it is, it's
Oh,
way back there.
oh, it's a Tennessee as well.
I always have my iPad at the time on too, so.
Go ahead, please. So I can
I can do that. I can do it right here. I can do it remotely.
remotely.
Yeah.
Oh. Start?
Do you want the microphone?
No, yeah. No. Use this one.
I got it. I'll walk around with that.
Or stand here and just go right into this. We want to get started. A couple of announcements. Next week is our planning session. Could we get a show of hands of how many people plan to be here for that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 or so, 8 or 9.
And I also know the attorneys intend to be here.
Okay, so maybe we'll make it 10. Okay, well that's right, Austin did mention that. And I'm going to pass around a thing that's got some spaces for you to write in some of your ideas right now, so we'll kind of have those on hand when we meet next week, and then you can come armed next week with some new and additional things if you would like to. Our speaker is going to say more about herself, but I'm going to introduce her briefly. It's Angelique Kobler. She's the Assistant Superintendent. Assistant Superintendent? What are you thinking? Assistant Superintendent of Schools here in Lawrence, USD 497, and in charge of teaching and learning. And she's going to present on Common Core, some of the practical effects, and my guess is this group will want to probably hear some of the political issues too.
Oh, well, now hold on.
No, well, you can almost bet that you're going to get the question, so get ready.
Go ahead and ask.
Angelique, we are glad that you're here.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you don't mind if I take the microphone off the podium. Well, I don't want to unplug it, but as a teacher at heart, I can't stay at the front of the room. So, thank you, first of all, for inviting me here today. A little bit of background. This is my 11th year in Lawrence Public Schools. I actually came to this community with my family, a 3rd grade son who just graduated from Free State last year successfully, and now he's doing well as a freshman in Brooklyn, New York. So I think that speaks a lot to how our schools prepare our students to take a Midwestern boy and have him successful, not only navigating the subway, but Soho and Lower Manhattan. And I just saw him last week for Thanksgiving, and he's doing well. So I appreciate that about our own school system. Started out as a principal at Schwegler Elementary, my first 3 years in the district, and I've been at the district office for 8 years, working with curriculum and instruction. So he said, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. I think I have the best job in the district. I have colleagues who work with HR and they oversee business and operations, and we call them like the roofs and the tires and the buildings. That's the boring stuff to me. I have another colleague who works with IT and the wires and the machines, and that's still not the good stuff. The good stuff that I get to work with happens in the classrooms, and that's the instruction, the learning, the students, and the teachers. So that's why I consider my job to be the best one in the district. So it's a privilege to have that opportunity to work every day. So we're going to talk a little bit about Common Core and what that means for instruction. I don't know your level of understanding about it, so I kind of brought a broad range. You'll hear the word Common Core used. You'll hear the letters KCCRS. Those are pretty much synonymous, but let's break down that acronym of KCCRS. What that stands for is Kansas College and Career Ready Standards. And those represent the Common Core in Kansas. Every state is allowed to personalize that information by a certain percentage, and we have chosen, our state leaders have chosen to call it the KCCRS, so Kansas College and Career Ready Standards, and you'll hear me refer to that in some of this information. So just think of those terms synonymously. That still means Common Core. In Kansas, we choose to call them College and Career Ready Standards, okay? So I'm going to play a video, and we've got some speakers set up. And I want you to just watch and listen what these students are processing. So this is going to set up our conversation about the Common Core. There are 125 sheep, 5 dogs, and a flock. How old is the shepherd?
How old is the shepherd?
Math problem.
What? There are 125 sheep and 5 dogs in the flock. How old is a shepherd?
I'm going to ask you too, so
Yeah,
take
I
notes.
don't know how to solve this
Why is that?
because it doesn't talk about anything about the shepherd.
Student says, I don't know how to solve
It
it.
doesn't say how old, like how long he's had them or anything, so it doesn't give me any hints about anything.
He's like, I can't answer it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Here comes the next
There are
student.
125
Same question.
sheep and 5 dogs in a flock. How old is the shepherd?
Years old.
How do you know it's 120? Can you please write that down? Now, how do you know that the shepherd is 120 years old?
They're gonna subtract 125 minus the 5 dogs and a flock.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You get the point, right?
No.
Okay. There were numbers in that math problem. Our kids go immediately to the numbers to solve the question. The numbers had nothing to do with the question. 125 sheep, 5 dogs, how old is a shepherd? Our former standards were not preparing our students to think critically about what information is missing. Our former standards trained our students and our children to answer multiple choice questions and problems. The KCCRS, the Common Core, wants to help teach our students how to be critical problem solvers. Like our first one who said, I don't know. I don't have any information on the shepherd. I can't answer that question. But we have a lot of work to do, and I'll personalize this. We went to one of our 5th grades here in Lawrence. Not one student said, I don't have enough information. We went to one of our 7th grades in one of our middle schools. 257th graders. 2 got it and went, I don't have enough information about the shepherd. I can't answer this question. So it's not about a multiple choice question. What it's about is being a critical problem solver. And if you take anything away from today, the Common Core will help teach our students and our teachers and their professional educators critical problem solvers that can take information and discern and decide, can I solve this problem? Because real life doesn't come at you with a problem and a recipe on how to fix it. For example, your hot water heater breaks. You don't go to the manual or a list of how to solve the problem and get multiple choice options. You may call the plumber. You may clean it up right away. You may talk to a significant other and say, you deal with it. But we have to teach our students how to problem solve given any problem. How do they attack it with perseverance? How do they attack it with reasonable information? And we've got a lot of work to do, and we have kids that are trying to add sheep plus dogs to get the age of the shepherd. Okay? All right, I thought you might enjoy the example.
Did anybody ask further, would you mind providing me his birth certificate?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, there were a lot of interesting ways to solve the problem. So, and we've all had math problems in front of us, and we've been baffled by them. I can personally speak about that, and you're like, I'm just going to salvage myself and start playing with the numbers. Okay? So here are those letters again, the KCCRS. It's not just about tweaking or modifying what is already happening. So what I want to do is take a look at this right here. The Honda Civic. Pretty good. Ran well. Great design. How old is that top one? Any car enthusiasts? 1995. Okay? Look at the bottom one. 2014. More streamlined, better fuel efficiency, better design. We're not sticking with that top model because we know more. We understand more about fuel efficiency. We understand more about wind dynamics and how to get more out of our car and how to use better materials. Take that same thought and apply it to learning in our classrooms and standards. We know more now what our students need to be successful. So we're not going to stick with a 1995 model of teaching and learning. We are adapting and enhancing. So that's what you see here. So the beauty of talking about the Common Core is that we have clear, consistent goals for all of our students. It's based on the best of the state standards that are out there. So with our 50 states, a consortium of professionals came together and said, okay, what are the best pieces from all of these different standards? Because we can admit there were states, and I'm proud to also share that Kansas had one of the higher level standards across the United States, consistently performing high. But you have other states, and I don't necessarily need to name them, who are consistently performing low. And we can't have that discrepancy because our students, we're not preparing them to live in our state necessarily. We need to prepare them to be college and career ready wherever they go. So you'll see some of the great pieces about the thought process and the design. It says research and literature is available on what students need to know and be able to do to be successful. It's not about memorizing facts and dates and things that you can Google. We'll talk a lot about using tools in the classroom. And if we are simply asking our students questions that they can Google, is that true learning? That's just memorization of facts. States and school districts and teachers retain much of the control over how we implement this. So it's not that it's being forced upon us. It's that here's where our students need to be when they graduate. Now what do we need to do? Get them there and get them ready. So that's the beauty of the design, is we retain a lot of control. So look at this. Where we may be right here, right now, what's on the horizon? We're not done designing. We're not done learning. So this is just that next step. It's in a constant cycle of enhancement. I don't know how many of you have connections to children in school, but it probably does feel different than when we were in school. The things that our students are learning, the information that they gain, and the experiences that they have. And that needs to continue to happen because society constantly changes and demands different from our students. So another part that's the beauty of the design of the KCCRS is that we're going to focus on coherence, rigor, and then at the very top it says a focus. So when I talk about a powerful shift, that math problem in the beginning, we're going to do some math here towards the end. I'm going to give you some sample problems so you can have some experience with, here are the type of questions our students used to have to answer. And then the new type of questions that they will have to be able to answer starting this year, next year, and all of those years ahead of us. This is rethinking our classrooms for focus. So if we're going to have a different set of standards, our classrooms have to look different. I don't know how much you've been following the news or you've heard about blended learning or the infusion of technology into our classrooms or the professional development we're supporting our teachers with, but all of that happens in the classroom. And remember, my involvement was what happens in the classroom, what happens with teaching and learning, what happens with students, and what happens with teachers. So it's not just that our students have to learn differently, who's teaching them? Another human in the room, the adult, the professional educator, has to change and enhance how they teach students. Do we have any teachers or former teachers in the room? Wonderful.
Professor included?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and if we're parents, then, you know, we're teachers too. So just not recognized with a license, huh? So our teachers have to teach differently. It's not just that our students are having to change how they learn. Our teachers are having to change how they teach and how they run their classroom and the expectations they have for students. So it's not just one part of our population in schools. It's really a comprehensive look at what's happening in the classroom. I've been in education for 25 years, and this is, I would have to say, in my experience, the biggest reform I have ever been a part of in education. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm more in tune with it or my role, but I don't remember such a seismic shift in the way things happen in the classroom and the way students learn. But let's have a little conversation about relevancy. And sometimes this agitates people when they hear that maybe our classrooms aren't relevant. Do you remember how powerful the encyclopedia used to be? How many people had a set of encyclopedias in their house? Almost all of us did.
We're crushing plants.
Yes, crushing flowers and leaves and plants. But I remember being about 5 or 6 years old and just loving to flip through the pages. You know, and all the information was alphabetized, and some of them had pictures with that particular item, but it was like the world's knowledge right there in a set of books. But if you think about that, that was stifling. If that's where I went for my learning, and that's where I gained my knowledge, what was I missing? So think about our classrooms, and if our teachers are the knowledge master in the classroom, then our students are only going to learn as much as our teacher knows, right? Mm-hmm. The student would only know if that's the only place they got their learning was from the teacher. And we know that learning is more than just what happens in the classroom. So now we have some families saying, I can get any of the information I would get in the classroom on the internet from another source. Why do I want to go to school when I can gain that information somewhere else? Information is rich out there. I'm not saying it's all accurate, okay? It may not be all accurate, but people can gain information outside of a teacher now because it's available. It's out there. It's free. So how do we make our classrooms relevant? How do we make them places where we want our students to enjoy themselves? They come to school, they're interacting, and they get those supports for critical problem solving. Because I'm not sure that Google or the internet can teach you to critically problem solve. That's my personal opinion. That's where our professional educators are needed even more so now, because now they're the architects of learning in the classroom to set up those problems where students are going, I don't have enough information to solve this. Let's talk about the shepherd. Why is that in the problem? You don't get that dialogue with the computer. We're not that far down the road with artificial intelligence. Personally, not sure we ever will be, to have that kind of dialogue, to talk through that shepherd problem with a student. So taking a look at this, and I'm just going to focus on math right now. Do I have any math lovers in the room? Awesome. So here's a question I have for you. How often do you hear, I'm not that good at math? It's okay, I'm not very good at math. Have you heard that in the past from either yourself or other people? Okay. How weird would that be if I said, you know what, I'm not that good at reading or letters, so I'm just going to avoid it? That brings a whole different perception with it, doesn't it? It's okay to say I'm not very good at math, but it seems weird to say I'm not very good at reading or letters or recognizing words. We're going to focus on math right now. We have to rethink the focus in our classrooms, so we break it down. Operations and algebraic thinking. When students say, why do I need to know this? Algebra has a specific function and a set of problem-solving situations and skills that will prepare our students, even if they're not going to teach algebra or be an engineer. Algebra is very important, so we're rethinking how we present that information to our students. Number and operations in base 10. Understanding place value. How many times have you heard about students who can't count change back unless the machine does it for them? Part of the critical thinking. Why would I give you 20 back in change when you only gave me a 10 and the item was 5? Okay? Critical thinking skills, just like the shepherd. Have you experienced that with the kind of change thing? Measurement and data. Having our students be able to estimate. There was a video that was viral out there on YouTube, and it was, I think personally they're probably separated now, because it was a husband and wife, newly married, and he starts taping her because she doesn't understand the miles per hour. So his question for her was, okay, we are traveling 80 miles an hour on the speedometer, and our trip lasts 1 hour. How many miles did we travel? So she starts trying to do the math, kind of like the shepherd thing, he's got it all on tape. She's like, okay, so the rotation of the tires is 80 times in a minute, and then I think it's like 160. We've gone 160 miles. And he is just baffled by her set of skills to get to the problem. So what we're trying to do is help understand, measure, estimate, relate addition and subtraction to length, work with time and money, represent and interpret data. Now, I'm not trying to pick on anybody specifically. I think we will continue to have challenges with problem solving and critical thinking, but now that we recognize that how our standards were and they need to be enhanced, we can address those situations. Classrooms for rigor. Rigor, when I hear that word, means it's going to be tough. I probably need to roll up my sleeves, and there's going to be some work involved. I'm not going to be able to sit back and coast through class. You may have been one of those. I had some classes like that where I didn't really have to listen. I could sit at the back and just kind of absorb, weigh in a little bit, do the problems because it wasn't very difficult for me. We don't need our students doing that. We need them rolling their sleeves up, experiencing rigor, and working hard through a problem. Specifically in math, we have